Today, let's talk a little about the dollar. But first, let me say this. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is not a left-wing or right-wing argument either. Just historical facts, made up of numbers and things that actually happened. In 1944, while the world was in the middle of a war, a group of people gathered in a small hotel in New Hampshire and named the meeting after the town itself, Bretton Woods. But of course, what really matters is not the name of the meeting. What matters is the decisions made there. And those decisions still affect every dollar in your pocket today. How? Let me explain. At that small town meeting, there were 44 countries, and they decided on something. That decision, which still affects us today for better or worse, was this. World trade from that moment forward would be conducted in dollars. Other countries' currencies would be tied to the dollar, and the dollar would be tied to gold. In other words, the dollar would become the world's reserve currency. So, what did it mean for those 44 countries to make this decision? Let me give you an example. When Japan wants to buy coffee from Brazil, it first has to buy dollars. Or when Saudi Arabia wants to sell oil, it asks you for dollars. Everyone became dependent on the dollar for everything. And they did. For America, this meant the emergence of incredible power. Just think about it. You print a piece of paper, and the world takes that paper and gives you real goods in return. Cars, electronics, clothing, any product or service you can think of. They call this privilege exorbitant privilege. So when did this system start to shake? Let us look at that too. One day Richard Nixon said this on television. We are cutting the link between the dollar and gold. Strangely enough, just like before, the world said, okay, because they had no other choice. The system had completely changed, and the dollar was already everywhere. Oil was sold in dollars. International debts were paid in dollars. The system had reached a point where the dollar, with the enormous power it had created, could stand on its own without needing gold anymore. But even though everything made the dollar look very powerful, something had started to change from this point on. But slowly, extremely slowly, so slowly it was barely noticeable. Now I am going to give you a few numbers. In the year 2000, 72% of world central bank reserves were in dollars. And what did that mean? The vast majority of money saved around the world was in dollars. That number has now fallen below 50%. It is still in first place, of course, but the decline is continuing, and it appears it will continue. So why is it falling? Because America has started using its own currency as a pressure tool, as a weapon. And this made other countries very uncomfortable. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, what did the West do? With an urgent decision, it froze Russia's dollar reserves. What did that mean exactly? It meant $300 billion. In short, with this move, the $300 billion Russia held in America became inaccessible overnight. This was a historic moment, because the world had seen something. If America wants to, it can seize anyone's money, say no, and lock their entire system in a minute. And from this moment, many countries started asking, what about our reserves? Are we exposed to this risk too? The answer is, of course, yes. And the list of countries asking this question is growing. China, India, Brazil, Saudi Arabia. A significant portion of the world's largest economies are now busy trying to reduce their dependence on the dollar. Let us talk a little about China, if you like. Over the last decade, China has been working hard to systematically increase trade conducted in yuan and has succeeded. The vast majority of its trade with Russia is now done in yuan. They signed an agreement with Brazil. They are in talks with Saudi Arabia. In fact, Saudi Arabia has even started conducting some oil sales in yuan. Let us think about what this means. It means the petrodollar system has started to shake rapidly. What is the significance of this? If oil is no longer sold only in dollars, the world's mandatory need for dollars decreases, and this weakens America's exorbitant privilege. So is the dollar collapsing? Of course not, at least not in the near term. Even though it has weakened significantly, it is still the world's most powerful currency. It is still dominant in global trade, international debt, and financial transactions. But a drop from 72% to 50% is not a small thing. And this decline is continuing. Throughout history, reserve currencies have changed. There was the Portuguese escudo, then the Spanish peso, then the Dutch guilder, then the British pound, then the dollar. None of them lasted forever. But this must also be said. What is there to replace the dollar right now? The yuan? No. The yuan is not fully convertible. The Chinese government wants to control the value of its own currency, and this creates a trust problem. The euro? Maybe. But Europe has its own problems. Cryptocurrency? Not yet. Its volatility is too high, so it appears that for now the dollar is a currency with no alternative. But this does not mean it will stay that way forever, because economic indicators sometimes change very fast and sometimes very slowly, but in the end, that change always happens. The real issue is this: the dollar is a tool of power, and the more that tool of power is used, the more others look for ways to avoid that tool. This has always been the case in history. The British pound was like this once. It was powerful, dominant, indispensable. Then it changed. Change comes slowly. Then it suddenly accelerates. And most of the time, by the time you notice, it is too late. Subscribe to Silk Road economics. Money and power have never been this intertwined, and we are following it. The role of the dollar in the global economy continues to evolve. Its influence, while still significant, now faces unprecedented challenges that appear more prominent with each passing year. Nations across the globe are seeking alternatives and reassessing their strategies. Some look to the East, others to emerging technologies. Yet, the dollar remains a key player. Unseating it is a monumental task. The central banks and financial institutions of the world are both wary and watchful. Their collective movements might soon redefine economic landscapes once etched in stone. Alliances are forming anew, economic ties rewiring decades of conventional trade. Treasuries filled with reserves are now potential points of vulnerability. The dollar's saga, both revered and scrutinized, marches onwards. Each financial pivot, each new trade agreement, weaves into a vast tapestry of interdependence and rivalry. The sheer momentum needed to shift away from a currency as entrenched as the dollar is staggering. Yet, whispers of change echo in boardrooms and international forums. It is the quiet resolve in stumbling economies and the assertive push from emerging markets. They speak of a world once rooted in dollar dominance, now gradually expanding its horizon. The shift appears inevitable, lurking in the detachment of old ways and the embrace of new possibilities. The dollar, amidst all its skyscrapers and vaults, stands at a crossroads. The ground beneath may tremble, signaling a future of exciting unknowns as hands once firm on the wheel begin to waver. While its reign persists, the currency's legacy and future will be shaped by forces beyond its own transactions. This intricate dance of money and influence leaves economists, governments, and global citizens pondering what lies ahead. As the dollar continues to navigate its journey, there is one certainty: this is only the beginning.